Okay. So what else did we talk about last week before we continue on? Remember from your notes and stuff, we had some stuff written on the board. And
Feedback.
good.
Ultimately trying to, especially with the questioning and the feedback, to push them towards higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy.
Okay.
So they're not just giving recall.
Good. Clear and concise feedback is probably the best thing with any communication, but with teaching too. I mean, that's just good teaching. But with and we talked about, I think maybe I even said it in the video, or I talked about, that I don't like in it being a discussion where people don't give you feedback when you're talking to them. That's good feedback. You nod your head, you smile, you look. Have you ever you talking to somebody and they just stare at you? And you keep talking and you think, when is the conversation ever going to end? Things like that. So feedback's very important because it can say a million things to a person and they could take it wrong or take it good, could read into it. Read or not read enough into it. Right? So basically that's what we talked about last week. Questioning, especially this right here when we got down to summarizing, inviting, these things. So we invite more information, we summarize what they say, then we acknowledge them and then attend to them. So attending is nodding and stuff like that. So we're going to be doing this thing again later and try to continue to do it. But let's then turn to page 169 in your textbook. Today we're talking about problem solving. Problem solving. Yes, is it?
That's okay.
You bought the online one.
Yeah, 169.
Yeah,
It's
169.
okay, I can share with someone.
Curses.
Just to listen.
I might have an extra old copy. Yeah, I do. I think 169, or no, I'm sorry, 109. 109. There it is, problem solving steps right there. So that's that chapter right there. That's a different edition. So this is talking about context for interpersonal problem solving. Let's first of all start with what is problem solving. That's the key. What is problem solving?
Solving a problem.
Working.
You
Finding
can
a-
answer it with the
Finding a solution to something that is not working.
Through steps to get the result.
sure. So you got steps into getting a result, finding a solution.
I think problem solving goes back to those views of communication.
Okay.
Ultimately, that transactional view of communication, where both are, continually co-constructing meaning to work their way towards, a common goal.
Okay, good. So you're both. It's got to be more than one person. Can you problem solve by yourself? Happens all the time. Within our context, we often problem solve by ourselves every day when you're teaching. Oh crap, the internet's down. What do I do? Or whatever. But within our context of communication collaboration, we're focusing on problem solving within groups and within settings of IPs, sit team meetings, or just professional collaboration or with administrators and so on. Okay.
Is that a resiliency too?
Yeah. So give us an example of what that means.
Resiliency, instead of looking at a problem, you come to a wall and you just kind of sit down and scratch your head. You find a way over, around,
Very
under, through it, and whatever the wall is, you find a way to go to the other side of the wall.
I don't even know if I spelled it right. It kind of looks good. So if you scribble.
We'll scribble up.
Yeah, nobody knows.
That
That looks good. That's perfect. Yeah. But that's exactly right. How to overcome obstacles, and that's part of problem solving too, right? And that's ultimately overcoming obstacles, what you're trying to do anyway. So,
I mean,
yeah.
again, when it doesn't.
Absolutely right.
And figuring out what to do, and sometimes the obstacles are other people that you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. Or the person you're trying to problem solve, they become the obstacle. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to talk some about scientific method tonight, which is I love science, and that's my area, and I've always defined science as a systematic approach to problem solving, and define the scientific method as a systematic approach to problem solving, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, let's look at these things right here on page 109. It talks about a context for interpersonal problem solving. Is that in your book? Yeah. Okay. Before turning to steps, because it talks about here's some interactions. Analyze the interactions, right? Principal, at our last meeting, we discussed priorities for this year for our school improvement plan. Today, we'll need to be sure someone is leading each element, who else will be on these teams, and the type of data we'll gather to document our work. Teacher one, Micah, go, read that.
Let's get ourselves assigned first and then decide who to place on each team. It seems the teams could then identify the data needed.
Teacher two, Amanda, go.
It says Amy promised that at least one of us would be free to meet.
That's a totally different
Yeah, I was
thing.
gonna say it's a whole different scenario.
Okay,
Sorry.
Kristen, do you have a
Oh, wait,
different,
hold
yeah? It says, let's go get our, teacher two, I'll agree, I'll volunteer so to lead the team working on a before-school homework program. Nothing like that? Shoot. All right, anyway, okay, so I volunteer, she says she volunteers for a before-school program. Micah,
And I'm fine leading the group working on setting up interdepartmental professional learning communities, PLCs.
PLCs, you love those. We're all part of PLCs. All right, so let's analyze that real quick. So do we have any problems here? No problems interacting, it seems like. What's the issue or the problem that came up?
Talking about priorities for
Priority school development. Okay, so we got this thing here, and how are we going to solve meeting about priorities for school development? It's a wonderful thing to have teachers volunteer. I mean, that happens all the time, doesn't it? Unfortunately, that's utopia, but unfortunately, yeah. So, all right, so let's analyze the other part of analyzing this. There was no, hey, I got this idea, or hey, this is this, or this is an obstacle in our role of doing that. Both of these people said, hey, I'll do this, and you know, okay, good. And how realistic is that?
If there are people who are qualified to take on those roles, then it could work out.
Okay.
But you always have the people who sit back quiet, not willing, or not the first one to speak up, who may actually be more qualified to take on that leadership role.
Very good. What
We don't
else?
have the context for what the priorities for the year were according to the school improvement plan. So they may not even be, addressing what the real.
Yeah. What if the people that volunteer to do stuff don't even know what the priorities are? I mean, they say, yeah, I'll do it, or maybe they know the principal's going to let me have some release time to go do this, so I can get out a fourth hour every day or something like that. So. Okay. All right. Next one. Thanks for making the time to work on the schedule. The more innovative things we do for kids, the tougher it seems to be to fit everything to get into a master schedule. I wanted to be sure that we touched base about your schedules for co-teaching and consultation, as well as resource services and schedules for the paraprofessionals. Teacher one, Leah.
I don't know how I'm going to get a schedule that I can live with this year. Based on students' IEPs, I'm supposed to get to 3 different classrooms for co-teaching, and I just don't see how to do it and still see the students as necessary in the resource room.
Kristen, teacher two.
I know what you mean. I have 4 classes to co-teach. Need to have time to meet with 2 other teachers at least once a week. And 6 students who need a resource period for study skills and reading instruction.
Let's start with the givens. One of us has to be available to cover English classes during first and second hour because so many students with IEPs are in those classes.
And we promised that at least one of us would be free to meet with teachers during 4th hour lunch.
Okay, let's start blocking these givens on the master schedule, and perhaps we'll begin to see some ways to make the schedule fit student needs and keep it feasible. For both of you, I can't read. Once we see where both of you need to spend time, we can talk about the roles of paraprofessionals. Okay, so what's the difference between that first scenario and this scenario with problem solving? So,
The second scenario to me, well, the first scenario is great. The second scenario seems more realistic because teachers are pulled in
absolutely.
so many different directions all at the same time, and you're still trying to figure out how to cover all the bases.
The interesting thing is, this setup worked for the most part. The one teacher said, well, I don't know when I'm going to find time to do that. The only thing different, that they were attending to her, to the teacher, They acknowledged what they were saying. I know how you feel, right? Did they invite more information? Not necessarily. But did they summarize? The principal actually summarized the whole thing right within the threesome conversation part of it. So it is more realistic. Is it more comfortable to read a scenario like that? I think it was, to me, it's more comfortable to read that than the first one. The first one was, what is it solving? You know?
Well, and this is a yearly problem, or this is a real life problem.
Absolutely.
And also the other thing I was thinking about though is with the second one is that it's still based on the teacher's perspectives, because like one of us has to be available to cover English classes during first because so many students with IEPs are that's that teacher's perspective.
Yeah.
They may not necessarily have to cover that. Like,
No, that's true.
something
They
that
may say,
we-
maybe a perception
that-
that she sees, but it's not really a
right.
an
The
issue.
other hours may be just as busy, but
Yeah.
that teacher may not see it.
Anything else on that? Now, leading this up to what now we're going to talk about these different types of scenarios, or I'm not going to go to the next one, but the types of problem solving or ways to come up with solutions. And then if you look on page 111, it talks about reactive and proactive problem solving. All right, think in your minds now. So I'm going to put this here. Reactive. And I'm going to use this for an example. Okay, one of your students is it's on your caseload for special education. They have let's say they have a behavioral disorder. Okay, they're having a meltdown, and they always have a meltdown at 4th hour or whatever time of the day. All right, and it's been happening recently. And the principal says to you, "Take care of this. Tell me what I need to do." The teacher tells you, "Tell me what I need to do." Is it proactive or reactive problem solving at that time?
Reactive.
And why is it reactive?
It's in the moment, and
The problem's already happened. Let's see what we have to do.
That's right. Moment. What else?
it's kind of secondhand information.
Okay.
There's not enough information given to make a decision, the most effective decision. You don't know what reaction they're having, or why they're having, or what they've tried to take care of the problem before.
Yeah.
You're given no place to start necessarily, other than just
So give me pros and cons of reactive problem solving. Let's go pros. Let's just make that.
Sometimes reactive problem solving is necessary if it's not been a pattern.
Okay.
You don't have a pattern of data.
If you do less time consuming, it doesn't happen frequently.
So less time. And then say yours again, Micah. You don't even remember what you said. Do you?
No, it's a necessity.
Oh.
I mean, it may just be necessary to be reactive if you don't have a pattern of data.
Very good. You just don't know, and you're on the fly, right? If you have a flat tire, you're not going to form a committee about it.
You're obviously not going to have proactive problem solving for no plans. for
Absolutely. You know,
Instead of just not doing anything, you have to do something.
yeah, you got to do it. We got to do it
Yeah.
right or wrong, right? Okay. Now we're becoming the leaders. You guys will get your master's degree. You're going to get your license to teach special education. You become the building leader in special education. You often are then looked at, you are making these decisions now, all right? Whether it be with colleagues or with parents. So we got any more pros? This is what I like. Oh, less time necessary, and I can't spell. Just do it. That's my favorite thing right there. I'm known for, there's a problem, let's just solve that thing, get it done, and it's wrong. I feel good that I got it solved, that I thought I solved it and got it out of the way. And it turns out like a week or two later, like, oh, that didn't make sense, you know.
But then also, you don't want to be that person that's going to your admin every time there's a problem. Like,
Exactly.
What should I do here? Well, we hired you to do that.
Absolutely right. So it gives responsibility, right?
It can be a starting place for future proactive problem solving, because you have to have some knowledge of what doesn't work.
Every day's a data day.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. And it's just like it's out of necessity. Every day's a day. I love that. So it's out of necessity that you are then, that's a starting point. This is what we're going to do from now on. Because how many times have you said that in your own life? Let's just set aside teaching for a second. Well, I'll never do that again. You know? I was sawing a piece of wood one time, and I'm sawing, and I had why I had my pinky, I don't know. I'm holding the board like this because it felt comfortable. It's like a 2x4, and I'm sawing like this. Does that make sense? And I said to myself, I need to move my pinky. I cut almost a complete tip off my pinky. I said it to myself. You need to take care of it, right? I wasn't definitely being proactive on that. But you know what I said from then on? From then on, I know, I guess a starting point. When I'm doing something like that, my fingers got to be completely out of the way, you know. I don't know, it's just a few years ago that I did that, but you'd think I'd be smart. Any cons for being reactive?
Want to make sure you're collecting the data so that your reactive doesn't become a pattern. If there is a pattern, you're not always being reactive. You don't want to get in a pattern of being reactive like this.
So collecting data is a pro to me, though. So what about con?
I'll say sometimes when it doesn't work and you're in a crisis, then
Yeah.
you
It can
gotta-
escalate the
it can- yeah,
situation.
So along with that, it takes time. So it's not solving the problem. It may say you tried something reactively. It didn't work, but it's still taking time. I got to put a new one in, right? I got to try and this is RTI. If you think about it, RTI is trying to be proactive, but oftentimes it's reactive. Oh, they're doing poorly. Let's throw it in an evidence-based strategy. Let's throw it in. Okay, that didn't work. Let's throw another evidence-based strategy in. Okay, that didn't work. Does that make sense? So, yeah,
I think also sometimes being reactive, like in my situation, is it takes more people too.
absolutely.
Like it has to be more people power when you're being reactive.
This reactive pro side would be, these are for the type A personalities. Boom, I'm making a decision right now. I'm going to war. You know? I'm doing it. Type, is it B? What? There's type A, B, whatever. I know type A are the ones that are just strong. The ones that are proactive, they're the ones that take time to think about stuff. This right here actually drives me crazy. And I hate to think about stuff. However, if we're proactive with decision making, it actually saves a lot of time and money. So, any other cons before we get over here? Cons? So more people. I didn't put that down. Mistakes happen.
It can damage a relationship.
Good. So there could be hard feelings.
Like, yeah, or lack of trust if something doesn't go.
So I hate that. So you make a decision and it's the wrong decision. And yeah, and I'm going to give you an example just recently. I told you I'm taking over freshman seminar. I told you that week last week? I don't remember. I'm taking over this group. It's a freshman studies class. All the freshmen have to take it coming in, right? And I've taught it for 15 years. Taught this class. I absolutely hate teaching the class. Hate it. But I love the students. They said, "Hey, by the way, would you like to be the director of this program next year?" Sure, I'll do it. I'm making sweeping changes. I'm actually having instructors that are staff members on campus. I'm going to different offices. I'm going to say, hey, if we're going to try to make this a family atmosphere, let's get this person in here. I got a person from marketing teaching. I got a person from our community services or student life. They're teaching. We have professors, of course, but some people don't have their master's degree. But I said, I want them. It's a freshman studies class, really. Anyway, but I'm getting pushback from that. I was being reactive. I came in and I said to myself, I'm making some changes. And yeah, hard feelings. I'm not trying to make hard feelings. I'm not, but lack of trust. If it goes terribly wrong, I told my wife, I said, this may be the last year I get to do this thing, so. But being reactive in those times, it's in the moment, the problem has happened, which I feel, and there's not enough information to make good changes and to go forward. So I'm doing the best I can with what I got. All right, let's go proactive. What's proactive mean? And problem solving.
Putting in place a plan in case a situation happens.
Anticipating situations.
Working to prevent something.
Putting in a plan of action before a crisis occurs, before something happens, so you have a framework.
Pre-
Steps to follow if
Or yeah, steps to
something
follow when.
happens.
Yeah.
Like a flow chart.
Or a plan of action.
Plan, I mean, we do that in our SIP meetings.
Yeah, yeah. This is definitely the smarter way to go. This is definitely not the smarter way to go, but you have to do it, right? Whether they tell you work smarter, not harder. Unfortunately, this makes you work hard. It's fast. You gotta make decisions on the fly. This makes you work hard too, because you gotta put in some time. So let's look at pros and cons, all right? Let's start with the cons.
Teacher follows through.
Follow through, good. And what does that mean?
The teacher, like when something happens, the teacher following the steps instead of,
Doing this, right?
yeah, making the situation less.
Consistency. I mean, that would be kind of,
All
Yeah.
teachers being consistent.
Yeah.
Yes, so follow through, consistency. We do this all the time. There technically is a protocol if your car doesn't start right. Don't you think in your mind I've got a plan. If my car doesn't start out in the garage, I'm going to say you're starting on the highway, or it's dark and it's snowy. It's in the garage, you got to go to work. There's usually a plan. I know I can call so-and-so. I know I got to call my husband, I got to call my wife or whatever. There's a plan in place. But we typically don't, sometimes we don't do those things because we're like reactive to it. Crap, the car will start. I need to go around. I got to get Daniel to the center. I got to get, we're always doing these things as opposed to following that plan. Was it the A-Team? Says, I love it when a plan comes together.
there's an A-Team van in town.
You're
Have you
kidding me.
No, we saw it the other day. Painted exactly
You're
like the
kidding me.
A-Team van, and it has the little license plate.
I have never seen it. I love it when a plan comes together. I mean, as a teacher, when you plan your lessons and they go well, you know that all you have to do is tweak those plans. You don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? So the cons, definitely, it's got to be consistent. There's sometimes lack of follow through with if we're going to have a plan in place, we should probably follow that thing. What else are cons about problem solving with proactive?
Takes more time.
Takes a lot of time, right?
And people that get together.
Time and people, that's exactly right.
Sometimes when people, in the name of follow the plan, they're not very flexible with situations that, or contingencies that
Yes.
the proactive is not planned for.
Yeah, this is the plan, this is how we
I
handle it.
must do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me of Dwight Schrute on The Office. You know?
Oh,
You guys
Oh,
like
I
The
didn't
Office?
go back
No,
and
you gave us
finish.
that. You-
I
Oh,
didn't-
okay,
we didn't
okay.
go. I didn't go back.
Oh,
and
I posted that. That's what I do at every
Love it.
PLC meeting or in service.
Absolutely,
It's not.
that's so good.
They never
You should
call
go
me
right
when
back.
I do that.
Internet's back on.
Oh, sweet. Dwight Schrute, same exact way. I mean,
I need to remind myself to look up the end of that.
do the cons outweigh the pros in proactive problem solving? I would say yes, they should. I hope we come up with a bunch here. So let's go pros, proactive. Since it says pro, right? What are some pros for that?
It gives a plan of action. You're not completely flying by the seat of your pants all the time.
Keeps the chaos down
Yeah.
because you actually, you're not always you're not always putting out fires. Like stop the fires. before they-
CHOAS?
CHAOS.
AOS, good. Playing gives you security.
I'm gonna say it's more consistent, like across the board, like in whatever classroom you're in.
Can be used in a broader scope.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's helpful for the child to know, like they can see, like we show our kids, like this is your plan, this is what you're gonna follow.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
this happens, you're gonna do this. So it's visual for our kids. So it's really easy reminder.
It's recognizable, by the way. Now, you can't recognize that word, but it's recognizable. So playing gives security, lack of chaos. It's consistent, it's broad scope, easy recognizable. People can see it, and kids can see it. This is our plan. Plan for the worst. Excuse me. Plan for the best, expect
Plan for the worst,
Expect
expect
the
the
best.
best, hope for the best.
hope for the best. I
I
don't know
think
what
also
you're
it's there's when you're proactive and you meet, it's more than just your idea. Like, cause you can be with a kid and just see one side of it, but
Yes.
there's
It's better thought out if you're with a
Yeah.
team.
So that says not responsibility shaved, but responsibility shared. Responsibility shared. So there's shared responsibility with a proactive problem solving. So, I mean, we spent, 20 minutes here talking about problem solving, proactive and reactive. So now give me some scenarios when you've used either one in your own, let's say professional life right now. In either one, give me some scenarios that you've done.
like that one that I was talking about that he just started probably 2 weeks ago, and his thing is whenever he becomes frustrated, he will start running on top of the desk, like running around. And so,
Yeah.
At first it was just reactive, like the teacher would call the office and we'd go down there and he would move our class, and it kind of moved to proactive. We had certain thing and put into place sensory breaks and times and imaging specials that someone would go and walk with them before and things like that when his trigger times were going so I mean
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Scenarios, times? Are your internet up?
Did it go away again?
yeah, it went away again.
Sweet.
I was gonna say, yeah.
You guys are toying with me.
Yeah.
It's all right. Well, I don't have any funny videos today either, so I mean,
Proactive, I mean, we would kind of move from reactive to proactive. We had 2 kids that would run around our school literally this year, toward the end of the year. And at first, everybody was just kind of reacting to what they would do because it would just happen.
Yeah.
And then we started to expect it, and so then we had to start meeting and figure out what we would do, and it still didn't get much better. But we felt like by the end of the year, we felt like we had tried everything, and we had talked to administration and talked to everybody, talked to parents, and done what we could to try to help. So it didn't change their behaviors, but it kind of helped our attitudes about it.
sure.
So I guess that would be an example of neither of them really worked out like we would want, but it felt better at the end of the year.
Like you're listening to the steps,
Right.
even if you weren't
And
there.
everybody had the same plan. And I mean, we came up with all sorts of ideas that we could try, and we decided not to because somebody in the team said, well, it's not a good idea. Like putting the whole school on lockdown.
Well, isn't isn't half the battle just feeling like you're actually trying to make some progress or trying to do something? So, I mean,
Proactively with ADHD students, even if they're not diagnosed, being reactive, just they're not going to
Yeah.
sit still. Sit
Yeah.
still. So you, I have them go in the hallway and they go sprint down and slap the wall, come back.
Yeah.
They need to do it twice. They need to do it twice, and they like it because they don't have to. They could run in the halls.
Yeah.
So they just go run down there and just go take a break.
Yeah.
What you're doing, go run down and do that. I watch them, so if anybody comes and yells at them, they say,
Sure.
And then, like, the thing is, the kids that do it, like most people, they see me, they understand.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Do they actually do it, or do they run down the hallway and jump up and look in the windows and in the doors of other classes?
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's like everybody knows those kids.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's that kid.
It's Micah's kid again.
They're pretty good about how people know. Sometimes they do.
Well, there's some things that we bring into this process itself. I mean, we've done both of these in our professional career, our personal lives. We've done reactive, proactive problem solving. Ultimately, problem solving can be painful. Can be very painful. And for example, I'm just going to use it on his personal life, right? So I finished my basement. We had a duplex we bought. Finished the basement myself. Wired some electrical lights and a light switch. And if you don't know what you're doing, you could cause problems. So I wired a light switch wrong, and it flipped the breaker, right? So I wired it, flipped it. Being the dumb person that I am, I thought, well, I'll reset the breaker and try it again. I tried it like 5 times. By that time, it's over, and I've burned the breaker out of the breaker box. And it's August, and that same breaker is tied to the air conditioner. So my wife's not very happy with it. So what do they call doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result?
Insanity.
Insanity, right? So oftentimes we do that, and when we're trying to plan or problem solve, we thought, oh, let's just do this. Let's keep doing the same thing over and over, and it's not working. And it doesn't work. So this with problem solving, being reactive, this helps us get to here. We ultimately have to do it, but we got to get to this point here. Because if we don't have this in place, then the chaos ensues. And that's, our lives are full of chaos anyway, so you guys know how that works. Some things that affect problem solving: bias. All right, so I think there's a place now. See if I can find myself here. It may not be on this. I don't think it is. Let's talk about bias anyway, just for the heck of it. And then we're going to go to page 114, which is RTI. We may not even be getting that book. So let's talk about bias now. What's bias got to do with these things here? And problem solving, being proactive and reactive. I gave you some of my bias already right here. Right?
Teachers that are like, that's not gonna work, we've already tried it, or
Yeah, exactly.
like the teachers that aren't willing to tweak it just a little bit.
That's right.
They kind of, if they already know it's not going to, or it's not gonna be worth it.
Yeah.
Just take them, like that kind of, get them
Absolutely.
out of here instead.
That's a huge issue when it comes to collaborating with that bias already against your kids. And it should. I'm glad you said that, and it should drive us crazy as professional special educators. It's not our kids. I mean, their kid. It's our kid. It's-
Sometimes I come up and
Yeah,
somebody
exactly.
5 minutes, like just for 5 minutes.
So there's a bias on that part too. So a bias from other individuals. So outside influence, right? Then there's also bias on the inside too. So let's now, we'll talk with that bias of the idea. Let's talk about internal and external locus of control. Remember that from studying psychology and stuff. So internal locus of control. I own what's going on in my life. I know that I affect those things. That I realize sometimes people outside me have a influence, but whatever decisions or what's going on, it comes from the inside, right? And those are the people that, to me, I would much rather be around. Much rather. Then you got the people that, let's say, that are 7th grade boys. External locus of control. It's his fault. It's always somebody else's fault. Could be girls too. Let's just throw that out there, right? So it's always somebody else's fault. It doesn't matter what happens. It's somebody else's fault, right? So with that bias also, they bring in that idea. It's always maybe somebody else's fault, so they're biased in that too. So let's use Sean, for example. What kind of bias might he bring into a collaborative event with you? He's a parent. He's talking to you, right? So what kind of bias may he bring in about his kid?
Oh, his own background.
Absolutely.
His own personal history.
Exactly right. And I love the way he explained it. When I'm in arguments with my wife, it just brings back those memories. And, it's the same thing. You get memories when you talk to your, well, okay, you have kids, Not yet. This will happen. When you have to experience it. When you go in and sit down to your in parent-teacher conference, and you feel you're shrinking down as they talk about your kid because they're not doing something or they're behaving a certain way.
Or fighting in that little girl's face.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah, so you shrink down like, oh, it brings like all these memories of when things happen. So you bring that bias in, you bring that baggage into any conversation. So we as teachers, special education professionals that are leaders, how do we diffuse all those bias situations? How do we take care of the situation at hand without causing more damage and doing more good? That's the key. Yeah, okay, we're going back to Johnny or Susie. Remember, I saw you over there. This is Johnny or Susie. That's the main thing right here. We're working with. I cannot believe they did not tell John. I know you're struggling with reading, and this is sometimes called dyslexia. And these are some strategies we might try with you. How many times are you? I hope you just do that as a special ed professional. You may not have time to do the whole gambit of going through his IEP, but this is what we're going to try, and I think this will help you. Tell me what didn't involve Sean. Okay, we're going to use Sean right here. So, putting the kids' needs first. What else? How are we going to get to that point of doing more good than harm in a conversation?
Having a plan, I think. I mean,
Good.
Yeah. Regular communication.
Yeah.
The positive thinking too. Like what is
Yeah.
something that is working or what's something we can go off of based off of that.
Okay.
Compliment sandwich.
Compliments it. Very good. Very good. I like it. All right. Okay, I'm going to give you another scenario. This is Sean here, and this is figurative Sean. Sean here. Mom and dad. Mom has been in jail a couple times for prostitution. Dad is a drug addict, but they actually showed up for the IEP meeting. They've both been in and out of jails, have issues, they have track marks. Sean comes to school, let's say he's 6th grade. Let's just put him on the edge. Middle school, elementary. He comes to school dirty. He's a pretty good kid. He struggles. Sometimes he's crying because he's hungry. Sometimes, what are you thinking about, Mom and Dad? Not very good stuff.
CPS.
Absolutely. What's the number? What's the number, and how fast can I call them? Right. What if Mom and Dad? I mean, I'll throw that in a second. So at first we have these bias now that we bring on our own bias against Mom and Dad. Okay. We're going to own bias. We know that they're knuckleheads. Okay, Mom, how can you do this to Sean? How can you? And it just flashed in my mind. Moms that prostitute their daughters out. I can't get it. Anyway, how can you do that to your child? How can you be so selfish that he's hungry when he comes to school, but they're here at an IEP meeting? How do we pull that bias out of our lives and set it aside? And can you fully do that?
I think that's hard to do. I can't remember who told me this, but I think that might have been one of my undergrads. She always said, remember that the parents are sending them to you the best they can.
Yeah.
And it's hard, to think that way, especially when I was, in KCK, you're is this really, but, that always would come back to me, remember they are sending them the best they can.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, I'm not saying I've never thought anything that better me, but that's just kind of what I try to.
And we're human.
Yeah.
I would want to say you are completely stupid idiots.
If we're trying to help the kids get to a better place and the parents are actually there, then we have to give them credit
Absolutely.
for wanting to try.
Absolutely.
There's something
That they could
Right.
care less. Maybe they actually come every time they can when they're out of jail.
Mhm.
Okay, what's my very first quote that I had to share with you guys from Dietrich Bonhoeffer at the class? Can you get to it?
I can get to it.
Okay.
Nothing that we despise in other men is inherently absent from ourselves. We must learn to regard people less in the light of what they do, or don't do, and more in the light of what they suffer.
Well, that's telling. I don't know if you go to a state school and you have the same class, do they talk to you about, and I remember having this class, and I don't remember anything, do they talk to you about empathizing with what a parent is feeling?
Mhm.
You know, they got two parents here that have been through hell, and they've done it to themselves. How do I look at them in light of what they do and don't do, but what they're suffering, and what they're causing Sean to suffer, right? So it takes a special person. You got to be a professional, and you got to be able to approach that to make Sean the focus. Were you going to say something?
I was gonna say, I think there's a difference too between the parents that just aren't there and don't do that, and then the parents that are causing, like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
the child is suffering because of it. There's some kids that, yeah, they don't get like the best food and
Yeah,
they
yeah.
shower every 3 days, but that's it. And then there's kids that are like verbally like hearing things or that are affected by it, and I think that's where it's hard to
Yes.
get hands on. Like the other
Yeah.
stuff is something that you can just say like their clothes don't match, their shoes, like they're doing the best they can, but when they're like mentally causing
Yes.
harm and stuff, that's when it's hard to sit back and
I try to give grace to people. You know, you doesn't understand the difference between mercy and grace. We talked about that before. Mercy is not getting what you deserve, and grace is getting what you don't deserve. I try to be graceful, and I think with this mom and dad, I could be comfortable with giving them good grace. But with mom and dad are saying to Sean, "You are stupid. Shut your mouth and sit there. You're worthless." And there's a problem. Sean, please step out in the hall. I'm going to talk to mom and dad for a few minutes. We can feel the right and have the right as professionals to talk to mom and dad about how they treat their child. And I don't care what they say, right? So we bring in that bias again, right? So it's a hard road to go through. So bias itself, it plays a big role in what we do and what we just say and how we react. I'll give you another example, right, with bias. I had a student teacher that didn't pass student teaching. And I think she hates my guts. So I see this student teacher and she's repeating it, okay? With bias in that sense, it could be very awkward, and how do I approach things? And so if I'm on this communication cycle, how do I go about doing this without being mechanical? And what and this is some things I have to think about. So even with our own responsibilities, with your families, with your colleagues, how do you get in a conversation with a colleague that has that you've like yelled at, or they yelled at you, or called you, "You're a stupid idiot," and you storm off, right? So how do you, and you've all had those people you wanted to do that with. So, how do we then, with bias or with our communication issues, we focus on, once again, what's the best thing for the student? And if we can do that, and we can put aside our biases just for a few minutes, and then do what's right, I think we can make some big progress. Okay? Basically, I'm still going down. The PowerPoint that I had was going to go with this, and I had video associated with it, but I'm just going down the outline of the chapter itself. Let's talk about response to intervention now. You guys good with that? Response to intervention, we talked about that early on in the first class, correct? That was a long time. Have you guys talked about RTI since then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Problem solving using response to intervention. Theory, really good. It's supposed to be a proactive way. It's almost exposed as a reactive way, because let's put this in, oh, that didn't work, let's put this in, but it's a proactive way of trying to figure out how to meet the needs of those students before they actually move into special education. Have you guys dealt with RTI very much with your general ed teachers? And since you're a general ed teacher, have you done RTI with kids yet?
They do a lot, most of the RTI at the
Elementary
and
level?
We normally don't have people that we identify once through.
That's right. In a perfect world, that's exactly right, and that's hopefully it stays that way. Hopefully by the time they get to junior high, middle school, junior high, they've been identified, you don't have to work on
We
that.
still do data collection.
Yeah, yeah.
Intervention, differentiation.
Yeah.
Based on the data. So I mean, we're still doing a lot of that
Sure.
stuff to track. Okay, is the student growing? If not, what can we do?
And let's make a scenario. Okay, you get a kid that has been in an accident, has traumatic brain injury. Then they have, they're in middle school. Then they have a change in behavior. So then how are we going to keep them being labeled? Well, they have traumatic brain injury. But how are we going to keep them from going in to get behavior services when we could do RTI and then put in some strategies in place and keep that from happening?
So realistic one is
Yeah.
the kids that come from the refugee camps.
Absolutely.
That, I mean,
Absolutely.
either the ones in like Burma, Nepal, or the ones that come from Africa. Which is,
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not that they don't know how to do it; it's just they don't speak it.
That's exactly right. So they're already coming in behind as it is. So then you got to figure out, okay, what strategies or evidence-based strategies can we put into place, or evidence-based practices that we can meet the needs of
Is
the
there a
students?
disability, or is it there?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So problem solving itself within RTI, I mean, in theory, it's really good, and I think it does work. Definitely works at the elementary level. And once again, we talked about the pros and cons at that time a while back. Cons, it definitely takes time, and it's going to take effort, and it's going to take a multidisciplinary approach to what we're going to do. And we call it the multidisciplinary approach to problem solving, right? So how we're going to make sure that this kid gets their needs met through across the disciplines, whether it be in elementary school or in middle school or high school. So, I mean, I wasn't going to beat that to death, nor do I want to beat that to death. So let's talk about now, within RTI, it's kind of based on the idea of the scientific method, okay? So you tell me when the internet comes back on, we'll just keep playing here. Who did that? Explain it to me. Okay. All right, remember back to biology in high school or general science. You remember the steps to scientific method.
Yes.
Hmm?
State the problem.
State the problem. Okay. It's in your book, isn't it?
I don't know.
Oh, God, I
I
found
don't
it.
think it is.
Form a hypothesis.
Good. What else?
Procedures.
Sure, or test the
Test the
hypothesis, right?
yeah. Collect data. No, evaluate. No, you have to collect the data.
So, right, so it'd be collect, evaluate.
Evaluate. Interpret. Make changes.
And the last one here pretty much is
Like collect the data. What comes after collect the data?
evaluate the data, interpret the data, and make any changes. And we do that now. I mean, if you remember back in your behavior class, your behavioral assessments that you guys work on those? Did you guys do those things?
That BAs.
Yes. Functional behavioral assessment. You're pretty much doing the same thing there, and it's all based on these things, all right? Why is this a big issue here? What's the big deal with stating the problem? What's the big deal with stating the problem?
Like, well, why do we need to?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
to figure out what our common goal is.
Okay. What's the biggest issue with stating the problem?
You have to know what it is.
Yeah, you got to know what it is. You got to know what the problem is, and you got to define the problem, right?
Sometimes we can think it's a problem, but then we go back to it and that
You have to know whether it's actually a
it
problem.
wasn't even a problem.
Absolutely, and that's the beauty about the scientific method, because when you get down here,
Yeah.
yeah, because the scientific method is fluid. So what you end up doing is you do this, you go all the way down here and realize it's not a problem, you start all over again, and you just back and forth. So defining the problem actually could lead to it's not really a problem in the first place. But for our purposes right now, we should be defining a problem, and it gives us a good idea of what exactly is taking place. And in the FBA, when they're talking about defining a problem, functional behavioral assessment, what are they talking about in functional behavioral assessment and problem?
The function of the behavior. The function
Yeah,
of
why is it
Why
there,
does it
you
do
know? And what they want to define that specifically is Johnny is acting out every day during reading. Every day during reading,
Okay.
right? So that's a problem. And why is it a problem? So then we got to look at that. Why is it a problem? Acting out every day during reading. Why is it a problem if Johnny acts out? Losing instruction time for him and for everybody else that's dealing with, right? So that's a problem. You're good. All right. So when does it take place, right? So during reading. Who does it affect?
The teacher, the class, himself.
So everybody, right? I'm gonna say all in the class. It doesn't affect the lunch lady down the hall, I mean, unless you.
Unless she's on detention.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yes. So with the stating the problem, there's a lot of things that kind of go along with it, right? So I'm going to put this in a bubble here. So we get to define it, but we also know where, when, how. All right, now this is a big one. How much? How much time is he misbehaving? How much time is he having a meltdown? Or how much, right? So there's a length of time. Okay? The next one would be how big?
The intensity.
And hence the intensity of it, right? Exactly. Problem solving now, let's change gears just a bit now. We're problem solving, we're going to use a scientific method, and I know I got to meet with Mr. Lewis down the hall today about Johnny, because Johnny's not doing very well in his class, in math. And every time I go to Mr. Lewis, he's always got an excuse that I'm not teaching the kid's never on, all these different things, right? So I have to figure out these things from Mr. Lewis. So if Mr. Lewis says, you got to get Johnny out of here. So what are we going to do now? Okay, issue is, he says, you got to get Johnny out of here. What do we do over here?
Ask what the problem is.
Exactly. We ask what the problem is. Tell me, why do you think you should have him out of there? And you have to be very diplomatic, of course, but with problem solving, there's a number of ways, and we're using this cycle still, the communication cycle, to solve these problems. Okay? Okay, so we good with stating the problem, why is there a problem, where's the problem located, all these different things, okay? And these things you're either writing down or putting in your hand, okay? Hypotheses, what's a hypothesis? Oh, yeah,
Your
okay.
thoughts on why something-
Say that again?
Your thoughts on why something happens.
Trying to figure out the
Educated
function
guess.
behind it.
Yeah.
And I love the definition,
Educated guess.
an educated guess. And why do we call it an educated guess?
Because you're not
Because it's not just based on a gut, it's based on like what you've observed.
Exactly. It's all based on your human beingness, right? And and what you perceive. What's the problem with an educated guess? It could be wrong. It's not correct up to be. It's not always correct.
It's subjective.
Very subjective.
It's an assumption.
And we know what an assumption does, right? So yeah, but we need the hypothesis, right? the key is when we are talking about any relationship or communication or problem solving, we have to come up with multiple hypotheses. That make sense? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Notice when we say, we're doing some of that up here because we're clarifying the problem. When we get the hypothesis, we're using some of that same information. We're going to say, okay, this may be the problem why Johnny acts out at reading every day. It may be this, it may be this, it may be this, or maybe this. Pretty simple. Pretty straightforward. Could all four of those things be wrong? Absolutely. Okay? What's a null hypothesis? You guys remember that from stats? Null hypothesis from statistics. The outcome's zero. Yeah, there's no change, right? So if I say a null hypothesis would be he's just acting out and it's none of these things, right? So what we're doing in statistics, if you look at statistics, I always say, okay, if we're using the scientific method, and I'm testing for it when we get to that in a second for testing a hypothesis, I either accept or disprove my hypothesis. Pretty simple. So if I get to hypothesis 1, I test it. My conclusion is hypothesis 1 wasn't it. I disprove it. Disprove it. Can't say that. We can't say prove because
Supported
it's
or
100%.
unsupported?
Unsupported or supported or reject or accept. Very good. Why don't we ever say prove?
Because you have to,
Yep.
to prove something in science, you kind of have to, it has to work that way every time.
Absolutely. It's got to be 100%, as close to as 100% as possible, right?
It has to be repeatable.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That's exactly right. And this is one of the reasons scientific methods here is for when we are doing these things and working in our relationships or working in class or working on a problem, we can repeat the same steps over and over again to get the same results. And that's called reliability, right? Let me just give you a stats lesson right there. So reliability. And like when you have a problem, you think it's a problem, and you get all the way through it, and it's not a problem anymore, this becomes valid then. Validity means you're actually testing what you're trying to figure out. That make sense? A poor example of validity test would be, all right, if I'm working on my computer and the internet's not working, I'm going to go turn the light off. If I turn the light off, it might work. I turn the light on, it doesn't work. Turn it off, that's not very valid, is it? But if I turn the light on and off, the light goes on and off a lot. And that's pretty reliable. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so let's talk about testing the hypothesis. Everybody good with hypothesis? We have multiple hypotheses. We don't just come up with one or two. And you probably will do that in your own conversations and talking when you're dealing with individuals or groups of people or parents or whatever. You're going to think to yourself, here's some things that could happen or may happen. Okay? Worst case scenarios, throw those out. Good things that may happen, you put those out too. All right, testing the hypothesis and problem solving. Collecting data, procedures, all those different, analyzing data. So now let's put that in terms of we're having an IEP meeting. How are we going to test the hypotheses we come up with in an IEP meeting? Because we got parents sitting there. My hypothesis would be the parents aren't really going to like these decisions we're making. Or they're going to love these decisions. Or they don't really care. Right? So there's like 3 different hypotheses. How do I test those things?
Try them out.
Try them out, absolutely. So,
Figure them out.
exactly. So I'm back in this conversation here, right? The issue is there's 3 hypotheses. Here's my issue. So I'm on this communication cycle. Hopefully, when I say the issue, okay, I give my IEP suggestions. I'm going to test my hypothesis to see if they actually like it, and hopefully they'll attend to me, acknowledge, and maybe ask me more about my whatever we're doing. So in the problem-solving process, we have to be able to test these hypotheses within problem-solving, because if we can't come up with a number of hypotheses, then we're just wasting our time. What happens if you just come up with one hypothesis? Because if it's wrong, what do you do?
Several hypotheses.
Absolutely, you got to start all over without any basis, right? What if you get a hypothesis that's this number 2 is almost right?
Keep going.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Were you gonna say something? Or you're stretching?
It's like fishing with dynamite. You might get something, but you don't know if what you did was, you don't know-
Absolutely.
you don't know like why you got those results at all.
You can't forget when we leave. I got a picture of my fish,
I was gonna ask you that.
30-pound catfish.
Did it bite your arm?
That's a good question. I know. This was from carrying a boat. It was a 2-man boat
Oh.
down the river, and it's muddy, and I slipped and fell. Hit my arm. Yes, but and it's, I'm on blood thinners, so that's why it's all. I
Oh,
bruise it
bruising.
up all the time. It looks worse than it is. So. Oh yeah. So anyway, don't forget about it. We caught 7 catfish. This was the biggest one. Okay, so we test the hypothesis. It's humongous, yeah. We test the hypothesis, trying to figure out if it actually is going to work, not work, accept, reject. Then we make the conclusions about whatever problems we're trying to solve. Right? Typically, the problem that we're talking about is about Johnny or Susie. Whatever problem we're dealing with, behavior, academic problems, social, emotional, whatever. Okay. Good with scientific method. All right. Well, so how long do you think the scientific method's been around?
Officially, when it being called the scientific method, or
Yeah. Well, okay. Just not officially called scientific method, but
since
The beginning of
since
time.
probably the beginning of time, right? Yeah, I wonder if the Egyptians could have built pyramids 5,000 years ago without scientific method.
I want to know where all the failed ones are.
Like all the failed pyramids?
Yeah.
Well, there's at least one we know of, right? The pyramid that goes like this and then comes in at a different angle. Because they measured wrong. It was going to be too high. So have you ever seen that pyramid?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it starts off fine, but then they figured it's going to be like way too high. It wouldn't support, so they angled it in. So that's a mistake that they had, right? So the good thing about is with problem solving is making mistakes is encouraged. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Making mistakes is encouraged. I think making mistakes even in mathematics is encouraged. Because if you can't learn from those mistakes, if you don't, going back to my, train leaves Philadelphia, which, anyway. So if we look at those ideas of making mistakes and how we approach those in our relationships and our communication and collaboration efforts, if we know that we can get to that same outcome or goal without making that same mistake again, you've done it. Oh, I shouldn't have said that, and I will never say that again. You've done it with your significant others, haven't you? Come on. When's the last time you said something to your farmer boyfriend that was, I won't ever say that again? Or do something.
Oh, I didn't know about
Yeah.
People don't realize how we like stuff shows up on Facebook.
Yeah.
People what?
Like when you like stuff on Facebook,
Uh-huh.
it pops up.
Uh-huh.
On the newsfeed.
Yeah.
I'm just defending them like everybody.
So,
But we're gonna.
so
I'm saying,
was it you liking or him liking stuff?
Him.
So
See,
he
there's
learned.
something
right?
weird. There is something weird about something now.
whenever you like something on Facebook, if you have an iPhone or anything like
Uh-huh.
that,
It'll text you.
No, it just shows up like on
Oh.
your newsfeed.
Uh-huh.
And so I just was like, oh, that's what you liked on Facebook. And he was like, what are you like? No, everything you like pops up on my newsfeed. And he was like, oh.
Sometimes it's
Yeah.
tied in, and I think it shows a like if you click on it to look at it. Because there's some stuff on there that it shows that my friends like, and I'm like, I know that they would not have published that or
Yeah.
actually liked it. You know what I
See,
mean?
That's what I'd say.
That make me a
too.
problem.
Because I think they're looking at it out of curiosity.
Yeah. That's
And
what
they
we're
didn't
saying.
do it intentionally, because I know they wouldn't put like out there.
So I
But
just,
yes, I
I
know what
mean,
you're
that's
talking
about
Yeah.
as crazy as it gets.
That's interesting you bring that up because we all our relationships and our interactions with people do the same thing. We're like, we may be say something out of curiosity. We're trying to get information from them. You know you've done that too. Hey, so what? I don't know. I was going to use that. So what's going on? Or tell me more about, and you invite that information, but then something happens and it gets ugly and then I can never do that again, right? So we learn from those testing the hypothesis by making these conclusions about those things. So are we good about problem solving? Yes? All right, let's talk about teaming for the last few minutes. Teaming. And that's chapter 6, teams.
Do you team at your school, Micah?
Like PLC.
Like, do you, like, grade teaming, like English teacher, math teacher, stuff, like, do you guys have?
We always do PLC. We don't have math teams or anything like that.
So you don't have like a silver group that everybody in that silver group has you for math and somebody for social studies and so on. So.
Oh, no, it's too confusing for our school council.
Do you guys do?
No. They got rid of it a while ago, but just because of the size.
Oh, Lathan still does it.
Yeah.
You know,
Split into 2 groups, and
Yeah.
if you're in this team, you have these teachers on
Right.
the side of
That's
the
right.
team. I've never heard
So
of it
much
before
better
this
for
year.
communication,
Yeah.
because then you can team together about kids and stuff, and plan units and stuff.
absolutely. You know, my son, both my oldest kids went through it. My daughter will do it eventually. Well, they actually do it in elementary sometimes too. I mean, you were talking about elementary, weren't you?
No,
Oh. Oh, okay. They do it in elementary sometimes too, where this group of kids are going to go team with this teacher, even though that's not their elementary teacher. They're going to do reading over here, and her kids are going to come do science over here. So they team.
That's what they do at Jay's school.
Yeah. But in middle schools here, you know, my sons were on. Okay, they're on Cougar team or Blue team or whatever, and they have all the same kids and all the same teachers together and everything. So teaming is actually an excellent way. Co-teach is an excellent way to actually increase the success of students. And one of our models here in our undergraduate teacher education program is to provide more mentoring strategies for our cooperating teachers so they can help co-teach. So gone are the days where we're trying to get, you know, when you got student taught, you're on your own for whatever, the teacher's gone reading the paper, you know. Now they're trying to phase them in for about 5 weeks. They co-teach during that time. They're full-time for about 5 or 6 weeks by themselves, and they co-teach for another 5 or 6 weeks. So they phase them out like that. So, huh?
I've got maybe 2 weeks, and then.
Yeah, absolutely. The teacher says, "I see you. I'm gone." You know. So
I was like, I just did your job for half the year.
Yeah. Exactly. Thanks for getting that.
I just paid Baker a lot of money to do your job.
Yes. So let's talk about a case for collaboration and teaming. Chapter 6. You know, and when you look at chapter 5, I mean, in the last parts of talking about evaluating outcomes, putting pieces together, we essentially covered that with the scientific method. I like the scientific method better. Teaming concepts, teaming decisions, 136. Okay, let's think about teams for a second. I've coached before. I've been part of teams before. Anybody else been part of an athletic team in here before? Okay, athletic team. What would it be? Little league, whatever. Part of a team. So what are some good things about being part of a team? I'm not saying education right now, but just a team. I'm on a team. Absolutely, work spread out. Very good.
Common interest.
Good. Common interest in a sports team is
The sport.
sport and winning. I don't care who says what. Oh, it's just how you play the game. No, it's not how you play the game. If you're not going to play to win, why play at all? You know, you got to play your best ability, of course. But say in a team, you have a common goal. We're going to play the best of our ability to win a game. Win or lose, we're still a team. Okay, so teaming is a big thing. So another commonality of a team is you typically have a leader of a team, right? Support, absolutely. And most of the time, the team members are not professionals. Does that make sense? Most of the time. Now, let's fast forward now. You guys are the NFL or NBA or NHL of teaching. You guys are the professionals now. You guys are unfortunately not getting the salaries of an NFL person, but you guys are the professionals, and you moved out of college, just like college players do, and they moved into a professional team. You guys have become a professional team also, okay? So you guys have become then part of a... Yes, Lord. I'm thinking, well, at first I thought, is there like a tornado warning or something like that? So, you guys become the professionals, and now within the teams, there's still aspects of being actually when you're a professional team. So teaming itself. So what must take place for a team to happen? People. Very good. You got to have people that are what? Common goal. We talked a little about that, but what else?
Capable.
Capable, reliable,
Really.
absolutely. What else?
You be aware of their roles.
I like it. There we go. Kind of got to push it into that area. So we got all these things that reliable. They are come for a common goal, kind of individually, but now and more individually, you got to know a specific role you have within the team. So not everybody can be the pitcher. Not everybody can be the quarterback. We all know those things, right? So what does the Bible say about? Look at me using the Bible too. That no one can say that. Hey, I'm the eye and I'm better than the toe, or hey, I'm the arm and I'm we're all part of the body itself. So within teaming itself, we got to look at the ideas of team concepts and how they affect how we actually focus on collaborating and actually communicating about our students, about Johnny and Susan. Page 138. Number one, we talked about just a second ago. Teams are clearly articulated goals and their effective service delivery leading to positive student outcomes, especially if we're thinking about teaming in classrooms. Who you're gonna team with as special educators?
Who are we going to team with?
Uh-huh.
Everyone.
Everyone. Absolutely right. Support staff. You're gonna. Yes. What about the secretary in the office?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And why? And how are you gonna do that?
Because she may be the carrot your kid likes.
Absolutely.
Or
That's a
something.
good point. Our mom and dad may like the secretary, and then you may be the intermediary between those. Right. So there's a number of different people are associated with that and how you're going to team within the building itself. So, number two, members are aware of their team responsibility roles, membership roles and responsibilities. It's just like you said. All right. We got team roles. What's membership mean? I'm a member of my church.
You
You have a vested interest in.
yeah,
Very good.
you're participating.
Very good. Now, let me throw this out. I could be a member of the health club. But I'm sure not going to the health club. You know? So, vested interest would be the big thing. Can we have members that are not participating? Yes. We have members that actually can be harmful in a school setting itself. So, when we look within the team, a membership is required. It's the good old boys club or good old girls club. I want to be correct in saying so.
More like they're actively.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when a person says, I'm a member of that team, and they're actively a part of it, should their roles or their viewpoints and ideas be respected? Yes. Yes. How do you feel when somebody outside your team comes in and tries to give you advice?
Depends on if it's good advice or not.
Good point.
Depends on who it is.
We're going to
Yeah,
use you.
protect
You're the
it.
coach in here right now. You guys coaching at all? You're the coach in here right now. You get the track coach. No, let's not use that. Let's use basketball. It's always. Yeah. Are you coaching basketball too? Okay. Basketball or wrestling. Basketball coach comes to you and says, hey, you should have run this play. Hold on a second, time out. What do you think is going through your mind?
The first reaction is to, anytime someone says you should have done something, it's, no matter what it is, what it's like to justify what you did.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Justify what you did because you want to make sure that person knows coming up to you, hey, I know what I'm talking about, right? And specifically, you think you're like, hold on a second, you're not even part of the team. You're not a member of the team. How can you bring that? Do you have a specific example? Have you ever been in something like that? They come from outside. Maybe even not even in school, but maybe in your personal life, they try to give you advice, and you're like, hold on a second, you don't even know what you're talking about.
The best are like this. Someone should
Yeah.
do something about that.
Yeah, someone should do something about that. But it's not going to be me because I'm going to go sit on my butt and watch TV.
When you're pregnant, you get all sorts of that.
Oh, my word, yes. I bet. Yeah. I remember my wife saying stuff like that, yeah. Or they tell you, oh, how it's going to be how to parent when your kids are really young. You don't understand anything. You're not part of the family. And if you think that's reverse, I'm not part of the membership yet. You know, when you have a little baby, let's say, for example, I have a 17-year-old, and you're going to have a 17-year-old in 16 years. Is that right? 15 and a half years. It's a little off now. You can't understand that membership yet.
No.
However, I've forgotten my membership to the 1.5-year-old club, right? So, but we look at the ideas of youth as characteristic with being part of a member, and they actually have roles and responsibilities. When a person on the team or the team that you have doesn't fulfill their role or responsibility, they let the entire team down. Okay? Which who's the head of the team typically?
It depends what level you're at.
Yeah,
Like-
depending.
At ours, it's the case manager.
Okay,
Like at elementary, it's usually the principal, at least in our district.
okay. Probably same for yours.
Yeah.
Special ed teacher could be the team. You become the team leaders eventually. So right, you're leading the meeting, you're calling a meeting, you're talking to mom and dad, you're doing all these things.
And I think
Yeah.
that also depends on what it is. So like if we're
Yeah, it can be
having an
psychologist
IEP
or
meeting, then
something.
it's me. If we're having like a SIT team meeting, that's our counselors.
Yeah, okay.
role. I
That's it.
think it also kind of
Mhm.
depends on the situation.
So and we have to be willing to, as a leader, then back up when it's somebody else's time to take charge, right? So ultimately, we're here for Johnny or Susie, right? So being a leader means I've got to give up some of my personal feelings, bias, whatever, so I can make sure Johnny or Susie gets the right. Number 3, team interactions are regulated by shared norms. What's a shared norm in a meeting? Same idea. Could be.
One person's talking. You guys-
What are you trying to say? Yeah, exactly. One person's talking. You go ahead, finish your word.
No, that's why you come together at the beginning of the year and you make your list of shirt numbers.
Yeah. This is what we got to do. All right. Today, our goal is when I'm talking, nobody talk. When I share my thoughts, you cannot say to me that was stupid. Right? You may think it all you want.
Everyone let everyone.
There you go. Everyone love it. I like that sound. You got all these sayings, man. He's got all these things. You should write these things down. So we all have all these things that we are that they're norms that we cannot do. It's a social norm not to do a number of things too. It's social norm. I can't slap you across the face, even though I really would like to, right? Or I cannot yell at you, and that's really unprofessional. How many times in a meeting have you ever gotten cross with somebody, or somebody gets upset at you? Can you do it professionally? Sure, but there's sometimes people cross that professional boundary. What do we have to do?
You CC admin.
So, yeah, that's exactly right. You bring in everybody you can, right?
Paper admin.
So if you're in a meeting about Johnny or Susie, and it moves from being in the norm realm, what do you do? Either we're parents or administrators or teachers. I like the way Kristen said it a while ago, when the parents are saying to Johnny or whatever, "You're stupid. You're an idiot," and we're done.
I want to buy some yellow flags and blow the whistle.
And throw it. Yeah, that's good.
Penny.
That's exactly. Or if you're, I hate to say soccer, but you hold it.
That's
Yeah.
the
The red
Red
card,
card.
yellow card.
yellow card.
Yes.
Do you have parents who get in your face?
No, they're happy if their kid has a D-.
No, I mean about sports.
At sports?
Yeah.
No, because we tell them at the beginning of the season, we have some norms that we give our parents at the beginning of the season in terms of, one, don't ever come talk to us right when a game's over, emotions are high on both sides. We're competitors, so if
Yeah.
you lose, so don't do that. And then two, before you ask us about playing time, ask your kid 4 questions. And we have the 4 questions that you ask your kid. Are you taking care of business in school? How's your behavior? There's 4.
Yeah.
Are you giving it your all in practice? Have you been coming to press, stuff like that? So if he can answer all those 4, then give us a call.
Yeah.
And we'll try to get him in there.
That's interesting problem solving. Right? It's become proactive problem
But
solving.
that's a great framework too.
Yeah.
Prevent.
It's proactive.
Absolutely. Being very proactive. It's a problem apparently in the past. So they've solved that problem by doing a number of things. Now, of course, and everything is 100%, but, yeah. You gonna say something?
Do you have that anywhere that you can email me? We're doing middle school sports now next year. Shall we mention?
Oh yeah, you guys have sports.
You're getting,
Uh-huh.
yeah, you're getting them back, right?
That's how we
Yeah.
keep kids from going to you guys. We're like, you can't play sports over there. You have to pay for that.
But
We're staying
I-
here.
I anticipate a lot of that kind of stuff, and I'll forward that.
Oh,
to our
especially in your
AD.
district. Shoot, yeah.
I know. So if you
Why
have
is my
if you
little
have
Johnny-
that printed somewhere, I'd like to.
Why
forward
is he
that
not
to-
starting? Well, his little Johnny is not very good.
You
Yeah.
can't, you
That's
can't
a
walk
really-
without falling down.
Right.
Walk at you go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well
Um,
I'll get that for you.
Team members are, social norms also. They're just those things that are, the like the null curriculum. You just know not to do them, right? Nobody teaches you. But you always have those people in groups that they don't understand those social norms. And it just drives you nuts. And it could really take a toll on your relationship with other people or with that person. So, number 4, team members are interdependent. Of course, we're all interdependent, connected. The connectedness of this is what makes it a team. Whatever decision you make actually affects everybody else on the team. So we're a team in here. If I make a decision to do something, it will affect all of you, right? Okay. Team members have unique skills and perspectives. You guys are all. If we were in a team here, you have a skill set that I don't have. You have one. You have one. You have one. And that's why I approach teaching as I'm here to learn as much from you as you are from me. Because you'll teach me something about coaching at the middle school level, which I've never done before. So there's some things I don't understand about that. To me, it's difficult. It would be difficult to coach at the middle school. You know some things about teaching at the middle school level that I don't know either because I've never taught middle school. I did my student teaching, but teaching homeschool and teaching elementary. All I know is high school. Although I have a K through 12 special ed lesson. Anyway, so I taught elementary, Sunday school and stuff like that, but it's a different world. Okay. So those are the things about teamwork. The checklist for the characteristics of team. We talked about membership, shared norms, team members and perspectives, and so on. So what are some benefits of teaming? Okay, benefits of being a team. And we talked about, here's some things that are good will happen, but what is some things that you can think about? Like, man, this is probably the best thing that could happen if you're part of a team. Now, whether it be with teaming with a SIT team or teaming with a colleague about a student or administrator or whatever. So you get that's what I write? TISE?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Many hands make light work.
So,
Efficiency.
Confirmation that you may be on the right track.
Different perspective. Different ideas.
so I'm going to say diverse ideas. Good. What else?
Somebody to challenge you too.
Very good.
I'm gonna say, and make sure that you're on track. I mean, someone that if you do get off track, or someone kind of keep you not reliable, it's not
Accountable.
accountable.
I wrote accountability. You didn't see it.
Thank
You
you.
didn't even see it.
Yeah, I
Well,
always
you were like, I can't understand. I don't know what you're writing anyway. So I put no yes men meaning no yes women. But so they hold you accountable. They're not just going to say, let's just do it. All right. What else?
Fun.
build relationships. Like,
Yeah.
All right, let's back up real quick and talk about team leading. Our team leader. What are some things that a team leader must possess?
Delegate.
So delegate. They're not micromanagers, right?
personal skills or communication skills.
Assertiveness.
Respectful.
What else?
Flexible.
I want to put knowledge.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
Calm.
What did you say?
Flexible.
Flexible.
Nah, there needs to be looking for the word. I don't like you can't be do as I say, not as I do. You gotta be
So you got a model.
be good model, consistent.
And so you also have to be able to let go of some of the power on certain things. So I don't know how you.
Realize you're not.
That'd be delegated.
Delegate, yeah.
You have to be somewhat thick-skinned, I guess, or what's the word?
Resilient.
Resilient, maybe. Yeah, because
Absolutely, because people are going to say stuff about you. You have a team lead, and you're going to have a team. You have to have a leader. Why is that? Now, they may not say much in the book about it, but I honestly think if you're going to have a team, you got to have somebody who's a leader. Period. And the reason that takes place is why.
Because the non-PCA way, if you end up in a situation where you have too many chiefs and non-divisions.
Very good. Very good. In your,
there's no direction.
typically in your building, the ultimate head, the CEO, is your principal, which is the commander in chief, right? Your principal, so my way or the highway. They can delegate down the leaders of the assistant principals, and it goes down the chain of command, right? So, but in your teams, you will be a team leader someday, and you must be these things here too. For these things to happen, this must be followed. Does that make sense? Because if you have somebody that's not respectful, this is not going to happen. So to get the benefits of teaming, you've got to have a team leader that's on board, that knows what's going on. Can you imagine, who are some good examples of team leaders that are famous?
Team leaders that are famous.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs.
George Washington.
George Washington, I cannot tell all that. Steve Jobs, some would argue that Steve Jobs wasn't respectful. Some would argue that, maybe a number of different things. Some would argue, but not everybody would argue. Does that make sense? Have you ever been around a leader that everybody would argue that they are not those things? You're like, everybody says that about them, right? I guarantee Steve Jobs, not everybody said that. So, Jesus, very good. What did I have the Sunday school answer? My junior high Sunday school guys. What does this mean? Jesus. They always say it. And now that you bring Jesus up, thanks a lot, Leanne. Definitely the model, but these things are really associated with his example he's given us. Once again, I don't know your faith area. I don't know, which I probably should know that. We're such a small group. We should probably sit about and talk about it sometime. And if you're not a Christian, I'm not holding it against you. I want you to say I'm not a Christian, and I'll say, you know what? I'll show you what I feel. But Jesus gives those examples. To be part of that team then, whereas now we're backing up being a Christian, being any part of a team, we're doing these things that we are actually accomplishing that one goal. These are ultimately, the ultimate benefit is success. I spell it right, S-U-C-C-E-S-S?
That's the way you spell success.
Thank you very much. You know how hard it is to write on a board? You guys know that. You can read it. It's hard to write on the board and spell correctly.
Writing is hard.
All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm stopping here for tonight. Okay? Well, I want to give you an assignment. It's mainly reading. I'll just leave that one. Okay. I would like for you to go through at home where you get a reading and watching. I want you to look through the PowerPoints. I want you to look at the videos that I've given you associated with those things under chapter 5 and chapter 6. And because I really wanted you to look at those tonight. Your goal between now and next week is just to look at those things and read any of the material I have there. I had an article I think I was going to do, and we were going to do this tonight, but I think we're going to come back to this next week. We're going to continue practicing. So you've got a reprieve tonight, Amanda. So, exactly.
I love doing that.
Exact practice, you come up with scenarios this week, so. Yeah. So any questions about what we're doing the rest of the evening? So technically, we're still in class, but you gotta do it where we have internet access, so you can do
The
it,
PowerPoints and watch the videos.
yeah, exactly. Okay? All right,
What's the assignment
Internet's
that's due next week?
It's not
Is
next
there
week,
one?
it's week 5.
Week
It's-
5.
Yeah,
That's
so
the paper,
The
right?
paper and the code, is that the presentation?
No,
No.
the paper on,
you think I know, I wrote the stuff in there, but is it benefits
It's
of
also
class? No.
something
something
collaboration.
in small groups. Might have one small groups and one of them.
Yeah, and I put down,
Nice.
also, this time, last paper is just kind of I just want you to answer the questions. This time, I want you to have, and I put in, use APA, but I want you to find a source associated other than your textbook, one other source that kind of fits in with some of those questions. Some are like, some of the thoughts and questions are opinion, but there are some things that you can find sources for. Just give me one other source other than textbooks.
Academic journal. From
Yeah, it could be a book, a journal, a magazine, something like that. You may
That's
find
on
it.
the library website.
So, and then give me a reference page at the very end. So, I don't really care about cover pages. I don't really care about that. But just citing the source would be great. So,
I'm
All
on
right.
autopilot with that stuff, and I just do this.
and you should.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now, you should get in the habit of it, because some of you will go on, continue on, and it ate my lunch. If I didn't do it right when I got to my doctorate, it would just ate my lunch. So.
Well, from that first class that you had us doing that,